Hello and welcome to the show. I'm George Eliason, and today we're going to discuss Navalny. Now, Alexei Navalny has accused Russia of trying to poison him with Novichok. And this documentary, made in 2022, is a representation of how much evidence there actually is. Navalny, the documentary, received a nomination for Best Documentary Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. It won the award for the Best Political Documentary at the 7th Critics' Choice Documentary Awards and picked up Best Documentary at the 76th BAFTA Awards ceremony. Now, what's interesting about this is that this particular documentary doesn't even rise to the level of, well, good comedy. And I don't generally do shows about comedy, but this one, unfortunately, because of the material choice, will have to be. And no, it's not dark comedy. This man accuses Russia of trying to poison him with Novichok. It isn't highbrow comedy. It doesn't even rise to the level of Simpsons comedy or bathroom comedy. Maybe bathroom comedy. Now, what problem do I have with this? Well, it's not a documentary as much as it is an InfoWar measure, not to promote Navalny. Now, if you know anything about Navalny, you know that his actual political views make him a dangerous nationalist, someone that we wouldn't want to deal with in the West. As a matter of fact, he started a political party and his views were so out there, they kicked him out. In reality, Navalny could not get elected dog catcher in a mid-sized Russian town. That's how little support he has in Russia. Most of his support comes from the West. So what about this documentary? What is it? InfoWar. Nothing more. Now, why can I say this so confidently? Well, what we need to do is look at what's real and what's not. We don't have to break the whole documentary down piece by piece. It does that by itself as it crumbles right from the beginning. And then you see him fall ill. Now, what's the matter with this so far? If you know anything about Novichok at all, it's the fact that it gives off fumes. So the people that drove him to the airport would be getting sick. The people at the ticket counter where he bought his ticket would be getting sick. The people he stood in line with at the airport would be getting sick. And with Novichok, you don't just get sick. It's not something that makes you sick. It's a very potent weapon, meaning it kills you in minutes. Now you have all these people with him contained on that airline. None of them are getting sick. Now, this, in contrast, is the right reaction to a Novichok poisoning. In this scene, you see the chemical reaction team at the Skripal scene investigating. Notice the hazmat suits. This is the real deal. This is how you handle a Novichok poisoning. Why? Because it gives off fumes. If there's any residue anywhere around and one of the investigators or rescuers breathes it in, they're dead.
Same sure nerve gas, but 10 times, at least 10 times more powerful.
So the Novichok agents are a group of agents. We call them fourth generation chemical weapons, and they were developed by the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Sarin and VX are third generation chemical agents. This is a more advanced fourth generation agent, and it's more lethal. It's about at least 5 times more deadly than VX, which is one of the most deadly chemical agents.
Make no bones about it. That's what would happen, and it would happen very, very quickly. Minutes. That's all you get. We go back to Navalny on the airplane. Does any other person look like they're expressing symptoms to any type of poisoning? Anyone around him? Anyone grabbing him? Well, the answer is no. Well, what are obvious Novichok poisoning symptoms? Well, the first and most obvious is that you lose control of your bowels. You literally go into nonstop diarrhea and you're urinating yourself all over the place, as well as puking. That is real Novichok symptoms. That is the expression of this particular poison. So when people see this happening, especially rescuers, right away they know they need special gear. They're not going to approach you because obviously there's something wrong. It might be chemical, the way it's expressing itself, specific type of chemical properties. They know that they're going to die if they go near you, so they're going to dress for it first. And here's Navalny being put on the ambulance. Do you see any of the personnel dressed like that? Does Navalny look like he's having bowel control problems? Do the ambulance workers seem concerned about their own safety? Now, let me tell you something. If someone has non-stop, uncontrollable diarrhea, it's going to raise a few eyebrows. You can agree with me on that. And see, that's why this documentary isn't even funny. Because the poison itself is so dangerous and deadly. If it was really an incident really going on, you couldn't miss it. The people in the plane couldn't miss it. They'd be dying. The people at the ambulance, now here they are, they're putting him on the ambulance. They ride with him in the ambulance. That ambulance would not have made it to the hospital. If everybody ignored all these symptoms, they would all be dead long before they made it to the hospital, experiencing the same symptoms themselves. Now, they get to the hospital, they check him out, and he has some kind of poisoning. And let's be clear about this. It seems to be possibly the same family of chemicals as Novichok is related to. Now, that's for real. And the poisoning itself happened in Tomsk. Now, let's go to the supposed scene of the crime. We go back to Navalny's hotel room with his people. And they search the hotel room diligently for Novichok, and they think they find it on the bottle. Now, look at the difference between the way they're dressed and the way a chemical team dealing with Novichok actually dresses in the UK and anywhere else for that matter. Now, they cut the video short. Some of these people were in their underwear, which is kind of interesting, barefoot. And they're looking for a chemical warfare weapon that kills you in a few minutes. Is this surreal? Oh, yes, these Navalny woke followers have COVID masks on. They're more worried about COVID than they are catching Novichok poisoning at the time. And that makes it really crazy and, quite frankly, hilarious. So they think they found it on a bottle, in a bottle. Well, okay. Well, how did they recognize it? Did they get it tested? They found a chemical in a Novichok family? Maybe. The people that drove him from the hotel to the airport would be dead. Navalny shouldn't have made it to the airport. The people at the airport would be dead. The people at the hotel would be dead. The people on the plane would be dead. The people in the ambulance would be dead. The doctors at the hospital would be dead. They didn't recognize the Novichok poisoning. Why? Because Navalny was asymptomatic. There was no signs of this chemical weapon anywhere. Like the Skripals, Navalny ended up no worse for wear after the incident. And you don't survive this weapon. And this is the point that everybody's missing. And this is what destroys the film. Why? Because it's an obvious fantasy. Now, what makes it a global British project is In Comes Bellingcat. And we have Christo Grozev as part of the documentary giving evidence of the crime.
Konstantin.
You know what time it is?
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 You gotta kill me. Please kill me. Give it to me, Daddy. Give it to me.
No, we're not. No, please don't do that. Please don't do that. That's not. I'm not. You're not going to hurt anybody. I'm a good guy.
Christo Grozev and Bellingcat, Elliot Higgins, Eric Toller, are part of the Global Britain Project. They actually came in, they started their work for real, where they got their fame. Now you can talk about Syria, yes, and it was the same team working with them as Ukraine. Their big claim to fame became MH17 and afterwards. Now, they, over and over again, keep denying they worked with Ukrainian intelligence developing the MH17 evidence. And what I mean by developing it is they actually created it. They helped create the cover-up for this. There was never a real investigation. And we're going to get to that another day. But here we have Christo Grozev in this film. He denies he worked with and for Ukrainian intelligence. And when I questioned him on it, he certainly denied it until I showed him the evidence. And Christo, oh boy, couldn't answer it. As a matter of fact, he cut off all communication with me after I showed him this. That's Christo asking for computer advice from Ukrainian intelligence. He thinks he might have been hacked. If he and Bellingcat are such great intelligence community members, why can't they figure that out on their own? Bellingcat has no mojo except what they're fed. They may be able to do a few things with geolocation, but so can everybody and their cat these days. Bellingcat? Originally, they were hired by the Canadian government through a company called IOTA Global, who was subcontracting for strategic communications laboratories in Ukraine. MH17 was the first project he got paid for. Projects after that just kept the money rolling in. Navalny is the icing on the cake for them. They're making their way into the world of documentaries, cementing their reputation as global giants in intelligence when they obviously lack it. There is nothing there. If Navalny was asymptomatic, there were no symptoms of a chemical poisoning at that level of Novichok. Well, what actually happened? Now, that should have been the question everybody was asking. So we go back to Tomsk, where Navalny actually spent a lot of his time at a farm. Well, what's common at a farm? Fertilizer. You grow things with fertilizer at a farm. Navalny, to the chagrin of Bellingcat, actually went online saying the Russians put it in his underwear. My question is, Alexei, what were you trying to grow that you put fertilizer in your underwear? This is just crazy. It doesn't even rise to the level of good bathroom humor. Navalny made the point he, quote unquote, caught the FSB guy responsible for this. How would he find that out? How would you find that information out to begin with? So he found out the name of it's an FSB guy. Well, okay, big deal. Now, Navalny says that he got them to send his underwear back to him, unwashed. And that's how they got the Novichok samples off his underwear. Okay, so now we have Novichok in his underwear at the hospital, and nobody's dying. Did they mail his underwear back to him? Give it to his wife? If she handled his Novichok without one of those hazmat suits on, his wife would have been dead. The people handling his underwear would have been dead. And quite frankly, if he had Novichok poisoning, honestly, the diarrhea smell, I mean, think about this. They didn't wash his underwear. Novichok is nonstop diarrhea and urination. Now think about this, realistically. So he gets his tidy whities back, and somewhere they pull a chemical off it related to Novichok, which is actually in fertilizer. Yeah. Yep. That's what happened. Old Alexei was up at the farm, probably tipping a few bottles of Samagonka, and somehow or other he managed to get fertilizer in his own underwear.
Mom, do not touch that sock! I swear to God, if you touch that sock, you will be in therapy for the rest of your life! No! That's my special sock! Put it down!
I'm George Eliason, and quite frankly, I still can't see the humor in this.